The departures board at JFK blurred through my tears as I stared at Flight 447 to Rome, now boarding without me. 30 minutes ago, I'd been rushing through security, confident my fiancé James and his family were holding the gate. Now I stood at an empty gate with no passport, no phone, no wallet, and a text message that changed everything. Find your own way home. This was never going to work. My name is Isabella Martinez, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a corporate attorney specializing in international tax law. Ironic, considering I was now stranded at an international airport with nothing but the clothes on my back. But what James and his family didn't know was that being a tax attorney meant I knew exactly where all their money was hidden. And more importantly, I knew how to make it disappear. I met James Wellington III at a charity gala 2 years ago. He was everything my working-class parents dreamed of for me. Harvard-educated, old money, sophisticated. His family owned Wellington Capital, a private equity firm that managed billions. I should have seen the red flags when he introduced me as his little lawyer, instead of by name. Should have noticed how his mother, Constance, always mentioned that James's ex-fiancée had been a senator's daughter. Isabella comes from humble beginnings. Constance would tell her friends at the country club, as if I were a rescue dog who'd learned impressive tricks. But she's surprisingly well-spoken. James always laughed it off. "That's just how Mother is," he'd say, kissing my concerns away. "She'll warm up once we're married." The trip to Rome was supposed to be our engagement celebration with his family, his parents, his sister Charlotte, and her husband. I'd saved for months to afford the first-class ticket, wanting to prove I could keep up with their lifestyle. James had insisted I give him my passport and documents for safekeeping at check-in. "I'll handle everything, darling," he'd said, taking my phone too when I'd tried to pull up my boarding pass. "You look stressed. Charlotte has some Xanax if you need it." I should have known something was wrong when they all went through security while I was stopped for additional screening. "Random selection," the TSA agent said. By the time I reached the gate, boarding was complete. That's when I saw the text on the agent's computer screen. James had sent it from the plane. My phone, my passport, my wallet were all somewhere over the Atlantic with the man who'd promised to love me forever. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The gate agent looked concerned. "I need to make a phone call," I managed. "It's an emergency." She directed me to the airline lounge, where they took pity on my situation and let me use their phone. I had 3 numbers memorized, benefits of being paranoid about technology failing during crucial deals. The first call was to my assistant, Maria. "Isabella? Why are you calling from?" "Maria, listen carefully. I need you to execute the Wellington contingency file. Everything we discussed." There was a pause. Maria had been with me for 5 years. She knew what this meant. "Are you sure? They left me at JFK with nothing. Execute everything. Now. On it. Are you safe?" "I will be. Make the calls." The second call was to David Kim, my contact at the Treasury Department. We'd worked together on several international tax evasion cases. "David, it's Isabella Martinez. I have information about unreported foreign accounts that need immediate attention." "Isabella? I thought you were on vacation." "Change of plans. Wellington Capital has multiple unreported FBAR violations. I'm willing to provide full documentation as a whistleblower." I could hear him sit up straighter. Failure to report foreign bank account forms was serious. Each violation carried massive penalties. "How certain are you?" "I prepared their taxes for the last 2 years, David. I have copies of everything. Accounts in Switzerland, Cayman Islands, Singapore. At least 40 million unreported." "Jesus. Where are you now?" "JFK. It's a long story, but I need those accounts frozen before they can be moved. Give me 2 hours. I'll need you to come in for a formal statement." "I'll be there." The third call was to my law school roommate, who now worked at the New York Attorney General's office. Stephanie answered on the first ring. "Bella? I thought you were going to Rome." "Steph, I need a favor. Remember the Wellington case you mentioned last month? The one about employment violations. The class action? Yeah, but we didn't have enough evidence to." "I have evidence. Wage theft, misclassification of employees, fraudulent PPP loans. Everything." "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. James Wellington and his family are on a plane to Rome right now. They have my passport and phone. By the time they land, I want their world to be on fire." "Holy shit, Bella. What happened?" "They happened. Can you make some calls?" "I'm calling the team now." "We'll need you to." "I know. I'll come in after I meet with Treasury." "Steph, Make sure the press knows by morning. I hung up and sat in the quiet lounge, watching planes take off into the darkening sky. Somewhere over the ocean, James and his family were toasting their clever plan to humiliate the gold digger. They probably laughed about how I'd cry, how I'd beg him to take me back, how I'd learned my place. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. You see, for 2 years, I'd been the Wellington family's personal attorney. I'd handled their taxes, their estate planning, their corporate structures. James had given me full access to everything, joking that it was practice for when we're married. I knew every hidden account, every tax dodge, every questionable business practice. I also knew about the affairs. Charlotte's husband was embezzling from the company. I'd seen the forensic accounting reports James had hidden. Constance had been taking money from the family foundation to fund her gambling addiction. James himself had been insider trading using information from deals Wellington Capital was considering. I'd kept their secrets because I loved James, because I thought we were building a life together, because I believed that underneath the snobbery and casual cruelty, there was something worth saving. The airline staff helped me file a report for my stolen documents and arrange an emergency loan to get home. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone, I always kept an old backup, was buzzing nonstop. Maria had been busy. The Treasury Department has frozen 17 accounts, she reported. Total value of approximately $43 million. The IRS is calculating penalties. It could be up to 50% of the unreported amounts, plus criminal charges. What about the other matters? The Attorney General's office is issuing subpoenas as we speak. The employment violations alone could result in millions in fines and back wages. And Isabella? The FBI is interested in the insider trading allegations. I smiled for the first time since the airport. Good. Send them everything. The Wellington family plane touched down in Rome 8 hours after leaving me stranded. According to the timestamps Maria tracked, it took them exactly 13 minutes to discover their credit cards were declined at customs, 20 minutes to realize their bank accounts were frozen, 45 minutes for Constance to have what witnesses described as a complete breakdown in the Fiumicino airport. James tried to call me from a borrowed phone. I let it go to voicemail. Isabella, what have you done? Mother is having a heart attack. Our accounts are frozen. There are federal agents at our offices. Call me back immediately. Charlotte's call came next. You vindictive bitch. How dare you? This is illegal. Then Constance, her usual composure completely shattered. You've ruined us. You've ruined everything. James never loved you anyway. I saved every voicemail. Evidence, after all, was my specialty. The media storm hit the next morning. Wellington Capital under federal investigation. Billionaire family accused of tax evasion. Whistleblower exposes private equity giant. My phone rang. Unknown international number. I answered. Isabella. James's voice was hoarse. Please. We're stranded here. They won't let us leave the airport. Our passports have been flagged. Funny how that happens, I said calmly. Being stranded at an airport with no resources. Must be terrifying. This is different. We're being detained. Find your own way home, I said, echoing his text. This was never going to work. Isabella, please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Mother convinced me. It doesn't matter. Please, just call off whatever you've done. I haven't done anything, James. I simply reported financial crimes I became aware of. As an attorney, I had an ethical obligation. We'll be destroyed. Yes, I agreed. You will. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of depositions, meetings with federal prosecutors, and media appearances. The Wellington empire crumbled with stunning speed. The IRS hit them with $22 million in penalties for unreported foreign accounts. The Department of Labor fined them $8 million for wage violations. The SEC opened an investigation into insider trading that would likely result in criminal charges. But the best part? The whistleblower rewards. Under federal law, I was entitled to a percentage of any money recovered due to my information. Between the IRS and SEC programs, I stood to receive nearly $5 million. The Wellingtons made it back to New York eventually, after spending 3 days detained in Rome and having to fly coach. The horror. On tickets purchased by a family friend. They returned to find their offices raided, their accounts frozen, and their reputation in tatters. James tried to see me once, showing up at my office building. Security turned him away. I'd had a restraining order issued based on the threatening voicemails his family had left. Tell her I need to talk to her, he pleaded with the security guard. Tell her I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't fix deliberate cruelty. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation of being abandoned in an airport like lost luggage. Sorry doesn't erase the moment I realized the man I loved had never seen me as an equal, just as a useful accessory who'd gotten above her station. 6 months later, I read about the Wellington family's bankruptcy filing. The legal fees alone had destroyed them, even before the fines and penalties. Charlotte's husband was in federal prison for embezzlement. Constance was in rehab. James was working as a junior analyst at a firm in Delaware, the only job he could get with his reputation destroyed. I used part of my whistleblower reward to start a nonprofit providing legal services to women in financial abuse situations. The rest went into a trust for my parents' retirement and my own future, a future that no longer included accepting crumbs from people who thought they were better than me. A year after that awful day at JFK, I was invited to speak at a conference on financial crimes. As I looked out at the audience of attorneys and federal agents, I thought about the girl who'd stood crying at an empty gate, abandoned by people she'd trusted. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't planned. It's simply showing people exactly who they've been dealing with all along. The Wellingtons thought they were leaving behind a helpless woman with no resources. Instead, they'd abandoned the one person who knew where all the bodies were buried. They took my passport, my phone, my dignity. So I took their fortune, their freedom, and their future. Fair trade, if you ask me. The universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. They'd left me at JFK with nothing, confident I'd be broken. But you can't break someone who knows their own worth. You can only set them free to show you exactly what they're capable of. And as it turned out, I was capable of quite a lot. 3 phone calls from an airport lounge. That's all it took to destroy an empire built on arrogance and lies. They should have let me on that plane. It would have been so much cheaper in the end. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.